Hello, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Kelly Fitzgerald. This is Sunday Talks with Kelly and Lisa. That would be Lisa.
Hi.
We, this is going to be an interesting show, if only because we really didn't have a topic. And yet, with us discussing how we don't have a topic, that sort of became our topic. It's the way it works sometimes. Um, I've been frustrated. Lisa's been frustrated. I'm sure all of you have been frustrated this week too. It's really easy to say, oh, well, it's going to be a full moon. There is truth in that. There really honestly is. But this goes deeper than that. So if you are, like we are, feeling really frustrated, having a lot of stressors come up, you find yourself worrying, this is your show.
Yes.
So how do you get through? And we're going to talk about getting through things first, but there's also a time when you need to take a step back, and we will get there. But how do you push through? Because we're kind of doing that right now.
Right. So, first of all, thank you for showing up today, Kelly. Um, I
Thank
know
you.
I didn't want to. I was like, "Oh, I've had this huge energy shift." And we're cyclical beings.
Yeah.
Women particularly have a much more regular cycle than men do as far as our energy levels, our physical abilities out with, our hormones and whatnot. But this past week has been kind of trying for me. And I always say you can outgrace yourself. We're supposed to give yourself grace. But there comes a point where you can actually give yourself too much grace and
Yes.
not get through and stay stuck because other people would call it making excuses. I I don't know how I ended up sitting here this morning other than I was obligated.
Yeah.
And I do get really good feelings when I'm sitting here having a conversation with you about things that people, that stuff that's going on around us that people want to talk about. For me, I recognized that I needed some connection to some spirituality so that I
Right.
could shift my energy. And this podcast does that for me. So that's one of the reasons why I showed up.
Yeah. It's funny because even at, an hour and a half ago, I was going, do we do the show? Do we not do the show? I really don't feel well. Why do we do it? But you have to kind of decide. You have to make that decision. And we all do this all the time. And I realize I'm shrinking. My chair is falling. Um, before anybody points it out, I know, I am aware.
We're accepting donations for new chair for Kelly.
It comes down to your own priorities, what you put the most importance on. And sometimes that's difficult for us to figure out. Um, if you're new to this whole, why am I feeling this way? I'm realizing I'm feeling a certain way. What do I do about that? Then take a deep breath and recenter yourself and say, how important is this for me? Will I regret not moving forward if I don't move forward? Sometimes we need to stop and we need to say, you know what, I need a break. But other times we tend to use that as an excuse. Oh, well, I'm
Yes.
tired. I didn't sleep well. So you know what? I really need to do self-care today. Sometimes we've talked about toxic positivity. Sometimes even self-care it can be negative because you overdo it. And sometimes we have a tendency to overdo things.
Right.
Um, so first step is to be mindful of what you're feeling and why you're feeling it. Are you having a temporary, bout of I don't care-itis? That's one of my grandsons says. I have I don't care-itis today. Okay. Um, but sometimes we get to that point where we're just like, I don't care, whatever, I don't care. Um, which is a better place to be than dwelling on should I, shouldn't I, should I, shouldn't I, shouldn't I. It's really an individual choice, and you really need to be mindful in order to make that choice. Um, the other thing that happens is when you get in mostly worry mode, but fears kick in and you just really are stressing over something and it turns into worry. Talk yourself through it. It's going to pass. That feeling you're feeling right now, it's going to pass. So just take a deep breath and write it out till it does pass. Sometimes that's the simplest thing to do. Like me this morning when I really didn't want to get out of bed and I had a dog literally standing on top of me going, you must get up. You must get up. I'm like, is it better for me to lay in bed under the weight of an 80-pound dog, or should I just get up? Sometimes those choices are really easy. I really didn't want to be crushed to death by a dog.
Well, it sounds like your dog is your anchor, and, you were talking about the anxiety, the worry. It's really not gonna get you anywhere.
No.
I know it has taken me work. We talk about work, like, what is the work? It's taken me a lot of stopping and realizing what exactly in that moment that I'm experiencing
Mm-hmm.
with the anxiety and worry, for example. So now I'm pretty much a laid back person, and sometimes I think I might be a little too laid back, but at least when I'm starting to see the pattern, I know I can step back and say, peel back the whys. Why? What if? How bad can it be? Okay, you don't pay your bills this month, and you're continually going through the worst case scenario that you can come up with. And then you're like, okay, well, that's kind of silly. So now instead of being worryful and full of anxiety, now you're giving your brain the ability to come up with solutions to see if there's something that you can do to fix your situation. Or is the worry something that you can't control anyway,
Right.
especially if it's outside of your control? My son, my youngest, is dating this girl who's in a not so good home situation, and something happened yesterday with some friends of hers. Now, yes, he has every right to worry. However, there's nothing that he can do for this particular situation.
Yeah.
So he needs to focus on putting his energy, redirecting it into something he can control, like what he wants to do with the rest of his life, and focusing on being, the best student and the best employee that he can be. So maybe one day he can help her in a way that will actually be impactful instead of giving her all of this worry. And then also when he's throwing all this worry onto her, that's what she's receiving back. So
Right.
it's not helping her at all.
Right, right. Sometimes we overlook that. You can care so much for someone that you end up hurting them sometimes. Um, and that's also a personal choice. How far do you go in helping someone else um, before you start hurting them? I've done that personally with people in my life decades and decades ago, where there was someone that was not dealing with their own stuff. And every single time they would get themselves in trouble, I would swoop in and fix everything. And they never learned a lesson. So I had to get to that point within myself where I said, you know what? This is stressing me out. What you are doing is stressing me out, and that's not fair. And I just stopped. And that's a really hard thing to do sometimes. Um, Most often, I hear from people talking about that situation with their kids. This was not a child, this was a grown person who should have learned lessons, years and years before. So that's something to really look at. Sometimes we end up really stifling people just because we are trying to help them. So that was a tough lesson for me to learn, because I spent most of my life as a people pleaser. And I've talked about this on other shows where I would just do anything just to have someone, like me and think that they were my friend when they were never really my friend. So when we're talking about things like going through a stressful time, going through bad days, I've had a bunch of bad days recently. Um, you have to stop and realize who's there for you. Are those people that you have put ahead of your own needs, are they there for you when you need them to be? And most of the time, they're not. They're
Right.
really not. It's really kind of a harsh awakening for most people to realize the people that you would do anything for and had done things for that really held yourself back aren't there for you. So when we talk about self-care, that's an aspect of self-care I don't think people really pay attention to. Sometimes you really need to clean house with your life. Um, but all of that stuff can combine into worry. And I caught myself there the other day. It was, well, gee, back then I had all these people I was sort of taking care of. And then when it was me, then nobody was there. So that's something to consider when you're talking about self-care. How do you know when to push forward and when to take a step back? Is there a sensation you get or something that tells you what to do when?
I don't know that I'm intuitive enough to notice the difference, but I can say I do feel a sense of urgency or
Mhm.
of like this, you have to do it. Yesterday was a very relaxing day for me. So the week of Mother's Day, there's several people that I know who have birthdays the week before Mother's Day. I'm one of them. My son was born the day after me, so our birthdays are very, very special to us because I was laboring on my birthday and Mother's Day the day
Thanks,
before he was
Nancy.
born. So, it's a very unique story for both of us. And then I have several friends and relatives who also share this particular week. And then to end it, we have Mother's Day.
Mhm.
So there's a lot that goes on this particular week. I decided that yesterday I needed to take space and just not do anything and just enjoy my Saturday. Now, when I say not do anything, I didn't, we're always doing something.
Right.
Um, I was still doing some things behind the scenes on my phone or on my laptop, but I wasn't putting effort into anybody else but me. So, to answer your question, I don't have that intuitiveness unless saying, okay, you really just have to do this. It's something it's a drive. It's some sort of GPS inside of me that says, "You need to get up and do the show this morning."
Right.
So, that's what I feel. But you mentioned cutting people off or
Mm.
letting people go. We've talked about the law of
Mhm.
allowing people to be who they are. We've mentioned a pretty popular person who now has a book
Yeah.
out there where you just let people be. And so, you allow them, but the thing is, you don't have to allow them in your space
Right.
to do that. You can absolutely allow them from a distance and it's okay. We've talked about this several times, particularly in our past shows. It's okay to let people go. It's okay to like slowly start lengthening the cord or cutting the cord, however you want to look at it, of how much you have interaction with them. And when you start letting that go, you start allowing room for people who are going to resonate with you on a different level. Hopefully, you're upgrading. Sometimes you're not. Sometimes you're going to need to repeat the lesson.
Vibration.
But, you can allow people to be who they are, but it doesn't mean that they have to be in your space,
Right.
being a vampire to your energy.
Right. Right. And sometimes you really do have to kind of give people their own space. It's like you be you, yes, be you over there,
Yes.
not
Yes.
not right here. At one time, I had a very large house and I rented out rooms, and they would laugh. My tenants would laugh at me because they could tell when I was about to start asking people to leave because the welcome doormat on my front porch would be turned around. So you are welcome to leave. And it kind of, that was my way of sort of subtly saying, guys, something's going on here. I don't like it. Um, and sometimes you do have to, turn that welcome mat around and say, okay, you are welcome to leave. You be you over there. Um, there is something too about when people show you who they are, believe them. How many times do we give people chance after, and they do the same thing and the same thing and the same thing? And I've had the person I was talking about earlier, who was an adult, actually older than I am, and went through some of the things you would have thought if I had described what was going on in this person's life, you would have, oh, they're a teenager. No, no. This, she was in her probably late 30s at the time and just didn't learn and didn't learn and didn't learn. And I saw that she was not learning and not learning. And I was like, here, let me help you more. Oh, you need more help. Oh, okay. And you
Mhm.
can't, you have to get to the point within yourself where you put yourself first. Someone yesterday, I did an interview about my last book. And uh, the question was, what was the biggest thing you learned from coming back from being pronounced dead? And I said, that I'm more important than the people I was making more important than me. Because
Ooh, I love that.
you
Oof.
have to be more important to yourself.
Mhm.
You have to put yourself first. And it is amazing how helpful that will become for you when you're going through something like this past week has just been. And I talk about planetary alignments and I talk about energies and I talk about all that stuff all the time. And I know this particular audience is like, what do you say? So that's okay. But it's I'm planting seeds here, guys. It's really important to recognize that whatever you are going through, guarantee you somebody else is going through the same thing or something very similar. So put yourself first. You know, um, there is a thing called the doormat syndrome. And if you are always allowing people to control your life and put you down and they are more important than you and you are nothing, don't make yourself a doormat. Don't do it. It's funny how once you become more mindful of what you're actually doing, stop going through your life on autopilot, pay attention to what you're doing. You start recognizing what you're doing, and then you can make changes. But you're not going to make changes because somebody tells you you need to. You're going to have to find it within yourself. Don't be a doormat. Turn the doormat around. They are welcome to leave your life. Yeah.
Yeah, as a recovering doormat, I agree. I have definitely come a long way in being more discerning on the decisions that I make for other people,
Yeah.
or that involve other people, and it is so freeing. It is absolutely, it's fabulous. I can't describe how amazing it is to be able to set those boundaries and hold them for yourself. Now, I mentioned boundaries. If you're not clear on your boundaries and you're constantly shifting them and you're feeling the angst when certain things keep happening, it's because you don't have clear enough boundaries. I noticed this yesterday, and I'm so glad I could segue into this. I had a situation yesterday that I was frustrated. I was angry. We're allowed to be angry. We're human. We're not allowed to hurt other people when we're angry, but I was angry and I was frustrated. I was probably also hangry because I hadn't really eaten all day. The situation ended up not going the way that I wanted it to. And I was really at the time battling the angel and the devil, right? The
Right.
angel on my shoulder, the devil on my shoulder. What good can I find of this? What good can I find of this? What good can I find of this? And also the rah, everybody, just everybody go away. It's just, I'm forget all you people. It's all going to be about me. So I was really trying to figure out how to balance that. And I was looking for the good while I was also fuming over the situation that happened. For me, because I've been doing work on myself and to figure out why I have these certain reactions, I laid a lot of expectations that other people didn't know I had.
Right.
I had boundaries that I moved the field goal a lot for these
Yep.
boundaries. And so when I was able to sit with it for a minute, I was upset with myself for
Yeah.
allowing this to happen.
Yeah.
I was upset that I didn't communicate very well, or there was I couldn't come up with a compromise because, we're human. We're in this existence together. We still need to be able to compromise and things along those lines. So for me, it was really about looking at that situation and saying, wow, I really am frustrated with myself. And now that I'm frustrated with myself, why? What are the
Right.
things that I didn't do that could have maybe lessened the whole outcome of how I felt towards these other people? Um, you know, Communication is definitely where it's at. But ultimately I could have said, you know what? I'm gonna go by myself. I'll see y'all later, and take away some of the guilt and some of the I felt like I had to please everybody. And
Right.
I don't even know one word to describe that, but I felt like I had to accommodate everybody, please everybody. And I could have said, no, this is my birthday celebration. I'll see y'all later. Deuces. I'm out because we can't seem to get on the same page. But I feared not being able or, not being with the other people that I loved, the people who I wanted there to celebrate me and my child. And yeah, so it ended up that I had a frustrating evening, but I was able to sit with it and figure out why. So
Right.
now that I know the why, now that I know the internal, I can say, okay, little girl, stop it. We're okay. We're okay. We're making adult choices now. We're not making child choices now.
Right.
And I can work on the next time I'm in a situation, I can set clearer boundaries. I can sit down and actually draw the boundaries out for myself and say, this is it. Like these are no stop, full
Right.
stop, not no stop, full stop. Like this is something I will not compromise on and go from there.
That's really important. You have to be in a position of understanding yourself, and what you said about inner child. We're fine. We're okay. You have to understand everything's going to change. It's going to change. I don't care what you're going through, what you're feeling, how worrisome it is. It's going to change. And if you learn, stick to your boundaries. Just because your boundaries are being tested doesn't mean you need to open the gate and let everything go. You have to keep your boundaries, but you have to make sure other people know what your boundaries are. I have a client who I have great boundaries. I'm this way. I am okay. She gives me this whole spiel about how great her boundaries are. And then she tells me something that immediately contradicts everything she just told me that she allowed to happen. Like, you can have strong boundaries. That's wonderful to have great boundaries. Everyone needs healthy boundaries. But you have to make sure the other people in your life know what they are. You know, with very few exceptions in my life, I have discovered people are not psychic because I am. I tend to think everyone else is as well, and they are not. So, no matter how intuitive you are, no matter what you think, the clues you've given people clues, they don't get them.
Yeah, we're not mind readers.
Yeah, you have to spell it out for people. It's
Yeah.
really important to take that extra step. Once you've decided what your boundaries are, make sure people know what they are too. Because most often the people in our lives, do not intentionally set out to hurt us.
Right.
So you have to understand that people need to be told, what is okay and what is not okay. Sometimes that's really difficult when you've known people for a very long time. I ended up losing most of the people in my life because by the time I realized I had not set boundaries, um, I was so overwhelmed with what was going on that I was like, stop everything. Starting over. And there was a time when I had many, many, many people locally to me that I felt were friends. And I have realized, especially over the last year, these people were not my friends. These people were like, what can you do for me now? And if you've got a lot of those kinds of people in your life, take a good hard look at yourself and what boundaries you have, because everything changes. And you may be doing quite well right now, and a year from now, something catastrophic will have happened and everything will flip, because everything does change. So you have to be secure enough in yourself and secure enough with your boundaries to be able to go through stuff that you need to go through. If you are truly depleted energy wise, if the thought of doing something has a pit in your stomach, maybe that's your sign that you don't need to do that at that time. That's one of the things when I teach developing intuition that I talk about, and almost everyone has one of these stories, and I think it's really interesting, so I'm going to talk about it. If
Please.
you have ever had a situation, and I'm going to use a different client, I've asked them, they don't care, as long as I don't use names. Yeah, but
Right.
I have this client who absolutely convinced, least intuitive person on the planet, least intuitive person ever created. They had zero intuition. So when they call me and they say, can you teach me how to develop my intuition? I'm like, you told me you didn't have any. Like, well, okay. I'm like, okay, what's happened? What has brought you to the point in time where it's time for you to develop your intuition? It was a car accident. For 3 days prior, this person was having nightmares about a car accident. They could see the car, they could feel the impact in their dreams. It would not go away. And they had agreed to take, loosely termed, a friend to a different town to pick something up. Did not want to do it, said yes because they were a people pleaser, had 3 days worth of, in the middle of the day, wide awake, would see an accident. So the morning came, left their house, drove to pick up the friend, got on the freeway, was involved in a 5-car pileup.
Oh.
Was not seriously injured enough to be on crutches for a while, but not seriously injured. Of course, this friend was completely fine, but that's why they felt it was time to learn how to develop their intuition.
Makes
That
sense.
that was the universe, God, whatever you want to call it, telling this person, don't go. And sometimes we get things like that and we override them and something terrible happens. It's uncanny how it happens, really. But you have to be mindful in your life, living your life consciously in order to even recognize those connections. So when we're talking about things like boundaries and letting people go, and do I push forward through this? Do I take a step back? All of these things depend on you being mindful in your life. because otherwise you're not going to notice them. It's important to develop that. So what do you think?
I want to add to that and say being mindful means being in your mind and not being distracted or using something to cope
Uh,
or to make it easier. I know when I started my journey with I don't want to say enlightenment, but just knowing myself, more of a knowing of who I am, what makes me tick, why I do some of the things I do. When I started that journey, um, I was okay, but then um, it's no secret that I'm 5 years sober. So
Yay.
thank you, part of my journey was using alcohol to numb some of the physical pain that I was in, but also some of the emotional and mental stuff that I was going through. I was not serving my purpose. I was definitely not living my higher self. And I allowed a lot of clouded thoughts and emotions overtake being able to step out of the situation that I was in, being more empowered and saying, it's okay, I can do this. And I allowed myself to stay stuck where I was. So, in order to cope with that situation, because of these fears that I had,
Yep.
I turned to alcohol to be my best friend. And I mean, really, outside of my children, alcohol was there for me when nothing else was. So, it was it quieted some of the things that I was going through, and it just
Mm,
kind of helped me, or what I thought helped me push through. Now,
right,
at the time, it was helping me. In
right,
hindsight, it was not helping me.
right,
So I
right.
was numbing
Yep.
completely from everything that was happening. The day I decided to stop drinking, that night, I did have my last hurrah, and the next day is the day I started my sobriety. 222. All of my sobriety numbers are 2. February 2nd, 2020. The world ended because of COVID. Am I allowed to say COVID? The next, like within a month of when I decided to quit drinking. And
Yep.
I still stayed the course. I still stayed the course. And when I was coming into that 1 year and 2 year and 3 year, the experiences, the emotions, wow.
Yeah.
I cannot describe it to you. It was intense. It was messy. It was sticky. It was beautiful.
Yep.
It was absolutely worth every moment of just processing everything, because then I started to see why I was repeating some of the patterns, or why I stayed when I shouldn't have stayed. And it allowed me yesterday, when I was going through it, to say, okay, little girl, we're okay. Like, we've been here before, and you're going to get through it again. This is minor. We're okay. We're okay. Go play.
Yep.
Go play. You're good. You don't need to protect me anymore. We're doing adult things now. So that was very helpful for me. The coming into your knowing, being in your mind means you really need to be right here. You don't need to be in
Right,
your past. You don't need to be in your present. You can explore and try to see what it is that is causing you to do some of the things that you do, but you don't need to stay there.
right,
And, if there are certain things, PTSD, for example, that keep you in certain scenarios, certain situations, if you're continually replaying these, trying to fix the outcome, please do involve therapy,
yes,
like a professional, to help you with that. There are some actual free resources out there that you can use to help you with that. But, you know, being, you have to be in your mind, you have to be present, and clouding it with any sort of addiction, whether it's a good addiction or a bad addiction, any sort of masking or numbing is not going to help you move through what you need to move through.
very true, very true. Um, I think it was our last show. I talked about dogs, and we were talking a little bit about addiction then. Um, Someone who knows me very well called me, who had watched the show, and said, "You have a major addiction. How many dogs do you have?" And I went, "Oh, didn't think about that." But truly, an addiction can be anything. Now,
Yes.
I do animal rescue, so I have an ever-changing cast of characters through here, but still, I went from it's odd how things happen. At one time, I had 30 goats because people were trying to get rid of them, and I sort of rescued everything. I rescued a horse once, you know. But that is also can be looked at as an addiction. I do not feel right if I am not actively doing something with the animals. And I thought that was really interesting, an interesting viewpoint. Um, don't know that I'm scaling back though. There's too big a need, and that's my thing is if there is a need, I think that we have domesticated animals, therefore we made the choice to take care of them. And that's just kind of the way I look at it. But
There are
mindful,
certain circles that say knowing and admitting is the first step, and it
yeah,
doesn't necessarily mean you have to stop caring for animals as long as you know
yeah,
that it could potentially be something that's not allowing you to sit with what it is that you're sitting with.
right,
I don't think animal rescue is a detriment unless you become one of those animal hoarders, then it's a terrible
right,
thing. But,
yeah,
definitely substances, food, sometimes the gym can be addicting, think work is
yep,
not a good addiction because
no,
you're using it to replace or to placate. So yeah, absolutely. You admitted,
yeah,
I used to be a collector. This is funny. If you look at my past history with people, particularly with relationships or
uh,
situationships, I used to be a collector of people I needed to help.
yeah, yeah,
Because I didn't wanna take a look inside, and I was like, "We're just gonna get all these people." No, I'm done. Like, if you're not coming to me with some sort of spiritual, guidance system that you're at least trying to better yourself, I'm gonna love you from a distance,
yeah,
but I'm not emotionally investing or energetically investing a lot into you if you're not willing to try to rise above your own situation. So I
right.
have since stopped collecting.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's something I had to come to the conclusion of. And I think most people eventually get there in some way, but you can really do that for yourself sooner rather than later. Um, I can I should that should be my next book. People I have, collected and tried to rescue because ultimately if someone doesn't want to change, no matter what you say or do, they are not going to change. You can give people the best advice. I have been known to put people through school back when I had the money to do that. And what did I get out of it? Well, now what are you going to do for me? Okay,
Right.
well, I'm through school now. I need a car. Buy me a car. Pay my rent. And I'm like, yeah. But you can't, maybe that's why I like animals instead, and have to put them through
Their
school.
needs are totally different. Yeah.
Yeah, and it just, you need to have people in your life that wanna see you succeed,
Yeah.
not compete with you, and I think sometimes we misconstrue someone who is jealous for someone who needs our help. And you can really set yourself up for a lot of pain that way. I know, been there, done that. So just be mindful of where you're putting your energy. It's really, really important. Really super important. Do you have anything else for today? This has been one of our old rambling shows
I
today.
know. It seems like we came home.
Yeah.
I really, I think we talked a lot. Oh, we did talk a lot, but I think we talked about a lot of very important points. Um, you know, I'm curious about the intuition and how we can develop that a little bit more. And I think that might be a good next week's show,
Okay.
right? I don't have anything to add. We're coming up onto some energy shifts. We're all feeling that. Take time for yourself. Don't overgrace yourself.
Yeah.
That's about all I have.
All right. Well, thank you guys for watching. Please be mindful in your day-to-day lives. Once you start doing that one thing, it's like the whole universe opens up for you, truly. So have a great week, guys, and we will see you next time.
Like, subscribe, and share. Thank
Yep.
you.
Bye.
Bye.